Read it in some science magazine. I don't really recall anymore. Maybe it was online. I have a sense of it being printed, like the reading of it. But at any rate, they were studying in trees xylem and phloem, right? The sort of circulatory fluid in the trees, bring the nutrients up,
Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
and the scientists were saying that, well, there's a limit to how high up the water could get in the tree, right? Just how much pressure these vessels can create and how heavy water is, and so that, doing all the math, and like the topmost sort of physical limit is 601 feet, or some number, whatever it was, it's a big number. And they said you just literally can't, unless you have like a hydraulic pump or an electric pump or something. Like the fluid just, there's no way, right? Okay, so kind of interesting. They kind of devise, here's this kind of upper limit. And then, somebody raises their hand. This is just me telling the story. This is, hey, there's these redwood trees that are taller than that. Your cute number that you figured out from science. There's these redwood trees that are, half again as tall or whatever. And obviously the moisture has to get up, out into their needles, So how is it that there's no way the water can get up there, and these trees are taller than that, and obviously they're living for thousands of years, hundreds of years, they're succeeding, and they're saying, well, there just really isn't a way. We've looked, there isn't a special mechanism where they pump it differently, or they have narrower tubules for the xylem and phloem going up and down, changing the pressure, or whatever. And so then they started considering, well, where do the trees grow? And they grow not just in terms of soil and temperature and sunlight, but where the fog rolls in, right?
Wow.
That's where they are in these, I don't know if it's mountain valleys or sides of mountains or whatever, but where the fog comes in off the ocean regularly, right? And that fog rolls in, let's say, from 0 to 1,000 feet or whatever it might be. And so they recognize that the leaves cannot get the water from the roots or the needles, right? But the fog provides the moisture that is needed at this height that otherwise a tree couldn't get moisture to. And thereby you can't have the whole photosynthetic process and all the rest. So what I'd invite you to do, the reason I'm telling you this, besides I just thought it was so interesting, is that I'll often stand in my practice and I'll consider, like usual, the Yong Chuan and the feet and the earth energy and the yin meridians and the connection to the earth. And then I'll often think about, well, can I receive that energy from the space around me, not just from the feet? Can I stand like a redwood, right? So I'd invite you to just try that for a second and see if you can kind of open up to that possibility. So I'll often do this when it's foggy, so I don't have to imagine too much, just kind of feel the fog around me, and then let the transpiration transpire.
It's a nice image to
Isn't
bring
it?
in.
Yeah. And of course, since I'm thinking redwood, I kind of think, sort of approaching permanence and very tall, kind of, helps me not complain about how my back and shoulders and legs feel after 2 minutes of standing, and it helps me kind of, stand up tall, I guess,
Yeah.
rooted in the nearly permanent instead of the more temporary world. You know, thick bark, fire resistant. A very interesting kind of sensation for me to feel like, you know, I'm drinking the fog through my pores, or whatever it is that constitutes my needles, you know. And, you know, needles compared to leaves are much more water loss resistant, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, they kind of preserve the moisture better than a leaf, which is, you know, helps understand why they grow where they grow. You know, they resist the desiccation. So the fact of the needles kind of helps preserve the moisture. It's interesting because, you know, we know that the water comes from the sky, but all the water that we drink comes from below our feet. You know, we always take it up, you know, into a vessel and then drink it down. And every once in a while you open your mouth in the rain, you got a drop or two, but you don't really drink from the rain. So you kind of, it has to pass the altitudes down to your feet before it comes back up. And that kind of standing like a redwood makes me feel like I can capture a little bit of it while it's suspended in the air. And a little bit more, you know, coming up through the roots.